Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Chapter 1. I accidentally vaporised my pre-algebra teacher. Look, I didn't want to be a half-blood. If you're listening to this because you think you might be one, my advice is close this book right now, believe whatever lie your mum and dad told you about your birth, and try and lead a normal life. Being a half-blood is dangerous. It's scary. Most of us get killed in painful, nasty ways. If you're a normal kid listening to this because you think it's fiction, great. Continue. I envy you for being able to believe that none of this ever happened. But if you recognise yourself in this, if you feel something stirring inside, stop reading immediately. You might be one of us. And once you know that, it's only a matter of time before they sense it too. And they'll come for you. Don't say I didn't warn you. My name is Percy Jackson. I'm 12 years old. Until a few months ago, I was a boarding student at Yancey Academy, a private school for troubled kids in upstate New York. Am I a troubled kid? Yeah, you could say that. I could start at any point in my miserable life to prove it. But it really started going bad last May on our 6th grade field trip to Manhattan. 28 mental case kids and 2 teachers on a yellow school bus heading to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So look at ancient Greek and Roman stuff. I know, it sounds like torture. Most Yancey field trips were. But Mr. Brunner, our Latin teacher, was leading this one. So I had my hopes up. Mr. Brunner is this middle-aged guy in a motorised wheelchair. He has thinning hair and a scruffy beard, and has a frayed tweed jacket, which always smelled like coffee. You wouldn't think he'd be cool, but he told stories and jokes and let us play games in class. He also had this awesome collection of Roman armour and weapons, so he was the only teacher whose class didn't put me to sleep. I hoped this trip would be okay. At least, I hoped for once I didn't get in trouble. Boy, was I wrong. See, bad things happen to me on field trips. Like at my 5th grade school, when we went to the Saratoga battlefield. I had this ancient revolutionary war cannon. I wasn't aiming for the school bus, but of course I got expelled anyway. And the time before that, at my 4th grade school, we took a behind-the-scenes tour of Marine World, Shark Pool. I sort of hit the wrong lever on the catwalk, and our class took an unplanned swim. And the time before that, well, you get the idea. This trip, I was determined to be good. All the way into the city, I put up with Nancy Bobofit, the freaky red-headed kleptomaniac girl hitting my best friend Grover in the back of the head with chunks of peanut butter and ketchup sandwich. Grover was an easy target. He was scrawny. He cried when he got frustrated, and must have been held back for several years because he was the only 6th grader with acne and the starts of a wispy beard on his chin. On top of that, he was crippled. He had a note excusing him from PE for the rest of his life because he had some kind of muscular disease. He walked funny. Every step hurt him. But don't let that fool you. You should have seen him run on his enchilada day in the cafeteria. Anyway, Nancy Bofit was throwing wads of sandwich that stuck in his curly brown hair. And she knew I couldn't do anything back to her because I was already on prohibition. The headmaster had threatened me with death by in-school suspension if anything embarrassing or even mildly entertaining happened on this trip. I'm going to kill her, I mumbled. Grover tried to calm me down. It's okay. I like peanut butter. He dodged another piece of Nancy's lunch. That's it! I started to get up. Grover pulled me back into my seat. You're already on prohibition, he reminded me. You know who'll get blamed if anything happens. Looking back at it, I wish I'd decked Nancy Beaufort right there, right then. In-school suspension would have been nothing compared to the mess I was going to get myself into. Mr. Brunner led the museum tour. He rode up the front in his wheelchair, guiding us through the big echoey galleries, past the marble statues and glass cases full of really old black and orange pottery. It blew my mind that this stuff had survived for 2,000, 3,000 years. He gathered us around a 4-metre tall stone column with a big sphinx at the top, and started telling us about how it was a grave marker, a steal for a girl about our age. He told us that about the carvings on the sides. I was trying to listen because it was kind of interesting, but everyone around me was talking, and every time I told them to shut up, the other teacher chaperone, Mrs. Dodds, would give me the evil eye. Mrs. Dodds was this little maths teacher from Georgia, who always wore a black leather jacket, even though she was 50 years old. She looked mean enough to ride a Harley right into your locker. She had come to Yancey halfway through the year when our last teacher had a nervous breakdown. From her first day, Mrs. Dodds loved Nancy Beaufort and figured I was spawn of the devil. She would point her crooked finger at me and say, "Now, honey," real sweet, and I knew I was going to get after-school detention for a month. One time, she'd made me erase the answers out of an old maths workbook until midnight. I told Grover I didn't think Mrs. Dodds were human. He looked at me real serious and said, "You're absolutely right." Mr. Brunner kept talking about the Greek funeral art. Finally, Nancy Beaufort snickered at something about the naked guy on the steel. I turned around and said, "Will you shut up?" It came out a bit louder than I meant it to. The whole group laughed. Mr. Brunner stopped his story. "Mr. Jackson," he said, "do you have a comment?" My face went totally red. "No, sir," I said. Mr. Brunner pointed at one of the pictures on the steel. "Perhaps you could tell us about what this picture represents." I looked at the carvings and felt a flush of relief. I actually recognised it. "That's Kronos eating his kids, right?" "Yes," Mr. Brunner said, obviously not satisfied. "And he did this because, well, I racked my brain to remember. Kronos was king of the gods." "And gods?" Mr. Brunner asked. "Titan," I corrected myself. "And he didn't trust his kids, who were the gods. So, Kronos ate them, right? But his wife hid baby Zeus and gave Kronos a rock to eat instead. And later, when Zeus grew up, he tricked his dad, Kronos, into bathing up his brothers and sisters and..." "Ew!" said one of the girls behind me. "And so there was a big fight between the gods and titans," I continued, "and the gods won." Some snickers from the group. Nancy Beaufort mumbled to her friend, "Yeah, we're going to need this in real life. It's going to say in our job applications, 'Please explain to me why Kronos ate his kids.'" "And why, Mr. Jackson, to paraphrase Miss Beaufort's excellent question, does this matter in real life?" "Busted," Grover muttered. "Shut up!" Nancy hissed, her face even brighter red than her hair. At least Nancy got in trouble too. Mr. Brunner was the only one who ever caught her saying anything wrong. He had radar ears. I thought about his question and shrugged. I don't know, sir. I see. Mr. Brunner looked disappointed. Well, half credit, Mr. Jackson. Zeus did indeed feed Kronos a mixture of mustard and wine, which made him disgorge his other 5 children, who, of course, being immortal gods, had been growing up completely undigested in the Titan's stomach. The gods defeated their father and sliced him into pieces with his own scythe, and then scattered his remains in the Tartarus, the darkest part of the underworld. On that happy note, it's time for lunch. Miss Dodds, would you lead us back outside? The class drifted off, the girls holding their stomachs, the guys pushing past each other, acting like doofuses. Grover and I were about to follow when Mr. Brunner said, Mr. Jackson. I knew what was coming. I told Grover to keep going. Then I turned to Mr. Brunner and said, Sir? Mr. Brunner had this look that wouldn't let you go. Intense brown eyes that could have been 1,000 years old and must have seen anything. You must learn the answer to my question, Mr. Brunner told me. About the Titans. About real life. And how your studies apply to it. Oh. What you learn from me, he said, is vitally important. I expect you to treat it as such. I will accept only the best from you, Percy Jackson. I wanted to get angry. This guy pushed me so hard. I mean, sure, it was kind of cool on tournament days when he dressed up in a suit of Roman armour and shouted, What ho! And challenges at sword point against the chalkboard to run the name of every Greek and Roman person that ever lived, and their mother, and what god they worshipped. But Mr. Brunner expected me to be as good as everybody else, despite the fact that I have dyslexia and an attention deficit disorder. And I have never made above a C- in my life. No, he didn't expect me to be just as good as the... He expected me to be better. I just couldn't learn all those names and facts, much less spell them correctly. I mumbled something about trying harder while Mr. Brunner took one long sad look and said, Mr. Brunner took one long look at the steel, like he'd been at the girl's funeral, and he told me to go outside and eat my lunch. The class gathered on the front steps of the museum, where we could watch the foot traffic along Fifth Avenue. Overhead, a huge storm was brewing, with clouds blacker than I'd ever seen. I figured maybe it was global warming or something, because all the weather across New York State had been weird since Christmas. We had a massive snowstorm, flooding, wildfires from lightning strikes. I wouldn't have been surprised if there was a hurricane blowing in. Nobody else seemed to notice. Some of the guys were pelting pigeons with Lunchable crackers. Nancy Bobafett was trying to pickpocket something from a lady's bag, and of course, Mrs. Dodds wasn't seeing a thing. Grover and I sat on the edge of the fountain, away from the others. We thought maybe we did that. We thought maybe if we did that, everybody wouldn't know we're from that school. The school for loser freaks who couldn't make it anywhere else. Detention? Grover asked. Nah, I said. Not from Mr. Brunner. I just wish he'd lay off me sometimes. I mean, I'm not a genius. Grover didn't say anything for a while. Then I thought he was going to give me some deep philosophical comment that'd make me feel better. He said, Can I have your apple? I didn't have much of an appetite, so I let him take it. I watched the stream of cabs going down Fifth Avenue and thought about my mum's apartment, only a little ways uptown from here. I hadn't seen her since Christmas, and I wanted so bad to jump in a taxi and head home. She'd hug me and be glad to see me, but she'd be disappointed too. She'd send me right back to Yancey Academy and reminding me I had to try harder. Even if this was the sixth school in 6 years, I was probably going to get kicked out again. I wouldn't be able to stand that sad look she'd give me. Mr. Brunner parked his wheelchair at the base of the handicapped ramp. He ate celery while reading a paperback novel. A red umbrella stuck up from the back of his wheelchair, making it look like a motorised cafe table. Mr. Brunner parked. I was about to unwrap my sandwich when Nancy Bobafett appeared in front of me with her ugly fence. I guess she'd gotten tired of stealing from the tourists and had dumped her half-eaten lunch on Grover's lap. Oops! She grinned at me with her crooked teeth Her freckles were orange. I just suddenly spray painted them on with liquid Cheetos. I tried to stay cool, but the school counsellor had told me millions of times, count to 10, get control of your temper. But I was so mad, my mind went blank. A wave roared in my ears. I didn't remember touching her. But the next thing I knew, Nancy was sitting on her butt in the fountain, screaming, Percy pushed me! Miss Dodds materialised next to us. Some of the kids were whispering, Did you see the water? Did you see? The water, it grabbed her. I didn't know what they were talking about. All I knew is I was in trouble. As soon as Mrs. Dodds was sure little Nancy was okay, promising her a new shirt at the museum gift shop, etc., etc. Miss Dodds turned on me. There I was, triumphant fire in her eyes, as if I'd done something she'd been waiting for all semester. Now, honey. I know, I grumbled. Monthly racing textbooks. That wasn't the right thing to say. Come with me, Miss Dodd said. Wait, Grover yelped. It was me. I pushed her. I started to see him. I stared at him, stunned. I couldn't believe he was trying to cover for me. Mrs. Dodd scared Grover to death. She glanced at him so hard his whiskey chin trembled. I don't think so, Mr. Underwood, she said. But you will stay here. Grover looked at me desperately. It's okay, man, I told him. Thanks for trying. Honey, Mrs. Dodd barked at me. Now! Nancy Bobafett smirked. I gave her my deluxe I'll kill you later stare, and then I turned to face Mrs. Dodge, but she wasn't there. She was standing at the museum entrance, way at the top of the steps, gesturing impatiently for me to come on. How did she get there so fast? I have moments like that a lot, where my brain falls asleep or something, and the next thing I know, I've missed something, as if a puzzle piece fell out of the universe and left me staring at a blank piece. The school council had told me this was part of the ADHD, my brain misinterpreting things. I wasn't so sure. I went after Mrs. Dodds. Halfway up the stairs, I glanced back at Grover. He was looking pale, cutting his eyes between Mr. Brunner, like he was wanting Mr. Brunner to notice what was going on. But Mr. Brunner was absorbed in his novel. I looked back up at Mrs. Dodds. She had disappeared again. She was now inside the building at the end of the entrance hall. Okay, I thought. She's going to make me buy a new shirt for Nancy at the gift shop. But apparently that wasn't the plan. I followed her deeper into the museum. When I finally caught up to her, we were back in the Greek and Roman section. Except for us, the gallery was empty. Mrs. Dodd stood with her arms crossed of the front of the marble fissure of Greek gods. She was making this weird noise in her throat, like growling. Even without the noise, I would have been nervous. It was a bit weird being alone with a teacher, especially Mrs. Dodds. Sometimes, something about the way she looked at the fissure, as if she wanted to pulverize it. You've been giving us problems, honey, she said. I did the same thing and said, yes, ma'am. She tugged on the cuffs of her leather jacket. Do you really think you could get away with it? The look in her eyes was beyond mad. It was evil. She's a teacher, I thought nervously. It's not like she's going to hurt me. I said, I'll try harder, ma'am. Thunder shook through the building. We're not fools, Percy Jackson. Mrs. Dodds said, it's only a matter of time before we found out you. Confess and you'll suffer less pain. I didn't know what she was talking about. All I could think was that the teacher must have found some stash of illegal candy I'd been selling out of my dorm room. Or maybe they realised I got an essay on Tom Sawyer from the internet without even reading the book. And now they were going to take my grade away. Or worse, they were going to make me read the book. Well, she demanded. Ma'am, I don't... Your time is up, she hissed. Then the weirdest thing happened. Her eyes began to glow like barbecued coals. Her fingers stretched, turning into talons. Her jacket melted into large leathery wings. She wasn't human. She was a shriveled hag with bat wings and claws, her mouth full of yellow fangs, and she was about to slice me into ribbons. Then things got even stranger. Mr. Brunner, who'd been at the front of the museum a minute before, wheeled his chair into the doorway gallery, holding up a pen in his hand. What ho, Percy! He shouted, and then tossed the pen through the air. Mrs. Dodds laughed at me. With a yelp, I dodged her feet and felt fierce talons slash the air next to my ear. I snatched the ballpoint pen out of the air, but when it hit my hand, it wasn't a pen anymore. It was a sword, Mr. Brunner's bronze sword, which he always used on tournament days. Mrs. Dodd spun towards me with a murderous look in her eyes. My knees were jelly. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the sword. She snarled, "Die, honey!" She flew straight at me. Absolute terror ran through my body. I did the only thing that came naturally. I swung the sword. The metal blade hit her shoulder and passed clean through it. Her butt, as if she was made of water. Mrs. Dodds was a sandcastle in a powder fan. She exploded into yellow powder, vaporizing on the spot, leaving nothing but a smell of sulphur and a dying screech, and a chill of evil in the air, as if those two glowing red eyes were still watching me. I was alone. There was no ballpoint pen in my hand. Mr. Brunner wasn't there. Nobody was there. My hands were still trembling. My lunch must have My lunch must have been contaminated with magic mushrooms or something. I had imagined the whole thing. I went back outside. It started to rain. Grover was sitting by the fountain at the museum. A museum map tented over his head. Nancy Boneset was still standing there, soaked from her swim in the fountain, grumbling to her ugly friends. When she saw me, she said, "I hope Miss Kerr whipped your butt." I said, "Who?" "Our teacher, duh." I blinked. We had no teacher named Mrs. Kerr. I asked Nancy what she was talking about. She just rolled her eyes and turned away. I asked Grover where Mrs. Dodds was. He said, "Who?" I paused first. I wasn't, and he wouldn't look at me, so I thought he was messing with me. "Not funny, man," I told him. "This is serious." Thunder boomed overhead. I saw Mr. Brunner sitting under the red umbrella, reading his book. As if he'd never moved. I went over to him. He looked up, a little distracted. That would be my pen, please. Please bring your own writing utensil in the future, Mr. Jackson. I handed it over to him. I hadn't realised I was still holding it. "Sir," I said, "where's Mrs. Dodds?" He stared at me blankly. "Who?" "The other chaperone teacher, Mrs. Dodds, the pre-algebra teacher." He frowned and sat forward, looking at me mildly concerned. "Percy, there is no Mrs. Dodds on this field trip. As far as I know, there has never been a Mrs. Dodds at Yancey Academy. Are you feeling all right?"